It is an honor to welcome back to Antrim Dunlap, whose family has an international reputation in woodworking. There is an entire book about which we will pass around. No one should steal the books. This is the library where you know not to steal the books. Just three announcements. First of all, if you have not joined the Antrim Historical Society, I put in the limerick that all of the cool kids in Antrim had already joined the Antrim Historical Society. So if you want to be in that social elite, there are various blank forms. In May, we will have Kevin Gardner here, and we were lucky enough to get a New Hampshire Humanities Council grant, and he is going to talk about discovering New England stone walls. In June, we're going to have a kind of memoir presentation. Two members of the Coy family, a very obscure family here in town, unrelated to anybody else in the community. Two members of the Coy family, Dr. George Coy, and Joan Gorga, who's also Dr. Gorga, but never wants to be referred to in that manner. We'll talk about free-range childhood in North Branch, okay? Being brought up on a free-range basis in North Branch. You cannot believe the trouble they got into. Here is the plan. We would like, because we're very concerned about the structural integrity of this building, and because Ron Haggett and I are both library trustees, and plus we're being observed by at least two selectmen, we would like to take about half of you upstairs. And Don will give a short little talk about his works that we're lucky enough to have upstairs. So maybe everybody...
Steve, excuse me, do you want Don to do his presentation here first and then have groups go up afterwards?
How do you feel, Don?
Either way, or I could
Well,
give
maybe we should have...
anybody that would like to.
Yeah, maybe we should do that. So Antrim Welcomes Back is honored to have a world-famous artisan, Don Dunlap.
First of all, I'm overwhelmed at the attendance. But I've lived in Antrim for about 68 years before moving, and I love it still. So, and some of the cabinet makers, Dunlap cabinet makers, also lived in Antrim back in the 1800s. Can you hear me back there? Okay. Okay. Well, Archibald Dunlap was born in Scotland in the early 1700s. And living in Scotland in the 1700s was really very, very bad. So the family moved to Northern Ireland, and they stayed there until about 1740. And in 1740, a lot of them moved to America. And Archibald was one of them, and he moved into Chester, New Hampshire. He married Martha Neal and lived on the Neal farm. And they had 9 children. And in the year of 1754, Archibald Jr. and 3 girls, there were 5 boys and 3 girls, all died of diphtheria in a 3-week period. The sons became cabinet makers, and 2 of the famous ones were John and Lieutenant Sam, and they came into Bedford, New Hampshire, and Gloucester, New Hampshire, and started the cabinet making shop there. So, and they, well, first of all, they were apprenticed with a master cabinet maker for 7 years, and the master cabinet maker taught the boys to find carpentry and also reading, writing, and ciphering. Now, on completion of the 7 years of apprenticeship, they received a small amount of money and a new suit, and they were on their own. The definition of a cabinet maker is an assembling casework. You would be using fine joinery, such as your dovetail joint, mortise and tenon joints, cab fans, cabriole legs, and cornices. And I'm going to stop for a few minutes and get on the legs and joints.
And if anybody would want to move forward to assist in hearing, that would be fine. Because we've got an empty seat here, empty seat, maybe people would hear better. Okay?
I'm going to pass these around, but if you would start from the ground and work up, and this is called a cabriole leg. This particular leg here, the size of it would go onto a lady's dressing table, or it's also called a lowboy. And you carve the leg and the tenon of the mortises, and you start building. If you'd like to pass that around. And this is another leg, and it's made out of curly maple. You can see the curls in it right here. And by the way, too, curly maple comes from the sugar maple. And it's really grown on the north and the west side of a mountain. And when that tree was very young, the wind would sway the tree back and forth and break the fibers in the tree. And Mother Nature, in their healing process, would create these waves in the tree. They're very, very hard. This one has a ball and claw foot, too, in the cabriole leg. And this is another, this would go on to a slant top desk. That's much smaller, but with a ball and claw. This is particularly cherry wood. And most of the work, the work in is in curly maple cherry. Now we get into joints. This is a dovetail joint. Just like this. This has been around a while and a lot of handling. But that would be on the top of the case, how it is assembled. The top and the bottom of the top case, and also all the door fronts, the rails and stiles. And this is the mortise and tenon joints. This is the bottom of the case. That would be assembled too. You cut your mortises and your tenons, would go together. And then there'd also be a wooden peg in there for extra strength. So, no nails. And this is, you can see the dovetail joint on this. This would be for all the top drawers and the bottom drawers, and also the casework too. And they would fit like this rather than like that. Dunlap, so most of their work was in maple, cherry, and of course pine. The pine was a secondary wood, so. All that is going around, I'll continue. John moved into Goffstown in New Hampshire, settled on Shirley Hill, and met Martha Gilmore. He built a colonial home and shop. They eventually had 9 children. After 8 years, the family moved down into Bedford, New Hampshire. And John disassembled the house board by board and reassembled it in Bedford. And according to Cochrane history, only cracked one clapboard. Both John and his brother Sam were both in the Army at that time. John was a major, Sam was a lieutenant, and even John had musters at his home in Bedford. In 1782, Major John sold a desk for 27 bushels of corn for the value of, in he made a case of drawers for Jane Walker for 118 pounds, and another drawer for Ann Walker for 126 pounds. And they seem to be the most expensive pieces of furniture that come out of the Dunlap shops. In today's marketplace, it go for about $20,000. The original Jane Walker chest and the reproduction, which I made, are both currently on display at the Tuck Library in Concord. The original Jane Walker chest currently on display. It was painted when it came out of John's shop. It had gold rosettes on the top, a green dark cornice, and mahogany. The old finish was stripped off, and the new finish of light maple stain put on it.
I get all these early, I gotta take them.
And the new one, which I reproduced, is painted exactly the same way as the original come out of the shop in John's shop. John and Sam also worked on a number of church interiors, building pews, molding, pulpits, Bedford, Temple, Londonderry, and Antrim. They also engaged in building paneling and corner cupboards in individual houses. Native woods such as I said, such as curly maple, cherry, and pine were used because they were plentiful, and they would either barter for the lumber or pay cash. Cash was really very limited back in them days. At times, John employed about 8 people doing farm work, making chairs and other furniture. They also made sleighs, coffins, and other items. And John was a selectman of the town, and most of the town was Scots-Irish people. John, who was born in 1746, died in 1792 on his way home from Boston, probably having the trip to pick up stains and brasses. Most of his brasses were made out of oak leaves, boiled, and different roots. And the brasses were imported from England, and they were very, very expensive. Several years later, Sam moved to Salisbury, New Hampshire, built a new home, another cabinet making shop, and a sawmill, and stayed there until he died. John, too, son of Major John, came to Antrim in the early 1800s. Him and his son, Robert, constructed a building on the right side of Grove Street, just before you cross Great Brook. They worked there for about 8 years and sold the building. It was turned into a mill manufacturing silk thread and woolen goods, hence it was called the Silk Mill. The Industrial Revolution came along in 1850 and mass-produced furniture, and the cabinet makers just about closed up their shops. So, between John, Sam, they had 13 Dunlap cabinet makers in small towns of southern New Hampshire. There were three Dunlap cabinet makers in Antrim in the early 1800s. John, too, his son, and Dan. In 1968, after a lapse of 200 years, I revived the cabinet maker. My nephew, Roger Dunlap, joined me as an apprentice in my shop in Antrim, where he later opened up his own shop, but died within 2 years. I have another young master cabinet maker, and his name is Don Boulay, and he's carrying the Dunlap tradition of craftsmanship. The Dunlap designs were quite different from other cabinet makers. They did use some Queen Anne and Chippendale, such as the cabriole legs and the basic bark designs. They also added some of their own Scots-Irish designs, such as a spoon handle fan, fans, raids, flutes, the harp ball and claw, very thin ankles on their legs, and the escrow with hearts in between it, and also the basket weave embellishment. Early in the 1930s, they were recognized for their unusual designs and were fine workmanship. Interest in their work has been growing ever since. The Curio Gallery of Arts in Manchester put out a book in 1970 about their work. Mr. Charles Parsons, an avid collector of furniture and tall clocks, did extensive studies on the Dunlap family of cabinet makers. He authored the book, The Dunlap Family of Furniture Makers, which was copyrighted in 1970 by the Curio Gallery, and there is a copy of that in the Library of Congress. There have been other numerous studies done on the Dunlap furniture makers. D.B. Gavin published a research on Dunlap in the file of New Hampshire Historical Society in Concord. And back in the 1990s, Stackpole Books published another Dunlap book with Philip Zay, which is a president of Historic Deerfield, Mass., and Mr. John Nelson, which is a draftsman, and that is the book that the library has here. Examples of Dunlap work are on display in several collections, and among them the New Hampshire Historical Society, the Curio Gallery in Manchester, the Peterborough Historical Society in Peterborough, the Wadsworth Infant in Hartford, Connecticut, the Mabel Bradley Cabinet Collection at Yale University, and the Winterthur Museum in Delaware, which contains a full room of Dunlap furniture. And that's about it. If there's any questions that I might be able to answer for you folks, I'll
Should
be
we
very,
open it up to questions,
very happy to do so.
comments?
That, the one you built, can you copy from the original, the first one?
The one upstairs?
No, you talk about building one with the
Yes,
original
the
paint.
one I built it in the Historical Society is an exact copy of
And the original paint. How did
Yes.
they know what colors were original?
But,
How did they know what colors were original?
well, they went around, Mr. Westmala, he's a curator of the historic pieces in New Hampshire, and he went around with a paint samplist and took chips. In fact, went right to Peterborough and found some chips of paint in amongst the top of the, so they could get the exact color for the new one.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions, especially loud ones. Joan?
Where did you get your wood? Do you have a supplier, or did you go out and find the trees yourself?
Sorry, that's
Where did, the question was, where did Mr. Dunlap get his wood? Did he go out on his own? Did he have his own supply?
back in the olden days, they
I
had
didn't know what was there.
sawmills, and then they would take out the maple, cherry, and pine. And the boards were really pretty much not free, and also
He was an old bachelor.
good width on them. And they would barter for them, or buy them outright.
Well,
But I buy my woods at a place down in Massachusetts. The local lumber company does not carry curly maple or cherry. And you have to go to a bigger company, and you have to buy 1,000 board feet at a time. They don't want you in there buying board.
Other questions or comments? Before we-
Yes.
What do you enjoy making the most?
I'm sorry.
What do you enjoy making the most?
Well, I think hardwoods. They're kind of fun to watch grow.